Fellow Amazonians, this is Dr. Cho Ayaba. I have read the letter from the U.S. Under Secretary of State for Africa, Mr. Tibor Nagy, and I think I need to make a very quick reaction to that letter. I was thinking of doing a scripted response, but I hope that this audio will be transcribed into text. Now, first, I'm happy with the tone of Mr. Nagy's letter. The tone was civil, almost advisory, but the substance was very wanting. Let Mr. Nagy understand the following. The territorial integrity of Cameroon has never been in dispute. It has never been subject to any contestation. The borders of Cameroon has never been threatened by Amazonia. There is no claim from Amazonia of any inch of the land of Cameroon. Mr. Nagy must understand that the international order has been protected since 1948 by the principle of territorial integrity. It has also been protected by the United States' belief that borders cannot simply be redrawn without treaties, without understanding of the consent of a people, and that the borders of Cameroon have never been shaped since it gained independence on the 1st of January 1960. So Mr. Nagy should understand that, the territorial space of Cameroon is anchored under international law, anchored on the principle of territorial integrity. We are not a part of that territory seeking external self-determination from it. Cameroon has moved its border beyond the border it gained independence within, and it has moved that border by force. And no people, no country will allow another country extend its border without the consent of its people or without a treaty. The 1964 Cairo Declaration is very clear on that. It's an international law principle. It's an international law principle, and I cannot lecture Mr. Nagy on it. I think he's well schooled on this. So that the United States respect the territorial integrity of Cameroon is a prima facie statement. It's not in doubt. Every other country does, including Amazonia. So I hope Mr. Nagy gets this clearly. The second issue I would like Mr. Nagy to understand is the United States has failed, Mr. John Frundi before. They were very supportive of the democratization process. They recognized the fraud in the elections of 1992. They provided some minimum form of support to Mr. John Frundi and failed woefully in ensuring that the victory claimed by Mr. John Frundi was restored. They went ahead with the status quo for purposes of maintaining, the international order, peace and security. They've done the same with civil society that have clamored for respect of human rights. They've never been robust in their stance to reject an authoritarian system that has hung on to power without consent for close to 56 years. And so the normative claim for democracy as a universal a concept has never been backed by, a tested stance across time and space. We understand the international system works on the basis of interest, and so too is this letter. Now, the Amazonian diaspora didn't migrate voluntarily. There was a push factor: economic deprivation, political persecution, and wanton brutality. And rightfully, they have contributed immensely in sustaining the lives of millions of other Amazonians through remittances. That's a fact. But the Amazonian diaspora is also in a cage. They are not simply contributing for the welfare of the country they've been denied the right to live in, but they are trying to change also the political system to give them an opportunity to return back to. That they don't have. And I don't think Mr. Tibor Nagy has factored this in his letter. What we must understand is the Amazonian struggle for freedom from the tyranny of Cameroon and the occupation of Cameroon does not expect, wide acclamation. It has never really happened before. Mr. Nagy must understand that they took the same stance respecting the territorial integrity of Ethiopia against the claim of Eritrea's right to be free from the occupation of Ethiopia. But the Eritrean people kept fighting. Their struggle was successful thanks also to the contribution from the diaspora. Mr. Nagy must understand that the first recruits for the Kosovo Liberation Army were Kosovo diasporans living in the United States. They were widely influential in U.S. support for the UCHK in Kosovo against the barbarism of Milosevic. And it is not going to be different with that of Amazonia. What I think Mr. Nagy has to understand is this: is for the United States to openly support the credible leadership of the Amazonian liberation struggle. That will send a powerful message to Yaoundé that status quo cannot prevail under the prevailing circumstances. The United States has not formed a coherent and cogent policy position. It has been everywhere. It has not sent a powerful message to Yaoundé that your intransigence, your barbarism, your genocidal policies will not be tolerated. Any attempt to want to placate Cameroon by writing a letter and informing them that the United States respect the territorial integrity of Cameroon, it's absolutely nonsense. That territorial integrity has never been questioned. It has been a U.S. policy since Cameroon got its independence on the 1st of January 1960. That policy has never changed. That policy is not in doubt. It's not threatened by our resistance against Cameroon's occupation. But what that does is giving Cameroon a blanket check to continue its murderous policies in our land. And we must reject that completely. Oh yes, I think the Amazonian diaspora has been very, very important in sustaining and exposing the brutality against our people. Without them, they would have massacred millions and buried in unmarked graves. Their activism, their contribution to developing our economy, to making sure that our parents, our own brothers and sisters stay alive, has been immense. But they cannot continuously simply be a source of financial contribution into an economic and political system where they have no say, where even their own contribution cannot have a long-term sustainable effect because of the structural breakdown of our communities. Mr. Nagy must know that, like the Eritreans, like the Kosovars, and like the like the Kurds that it is protecting in northern Iraq and northern Syria. Ambazonia needs protection, and we will continue to fight until United States changes its policy and recognize that international law principles that it has protected must be respected. And that Cameroon has no claim over our land, and it cannot use genocide to legitimize that claim. And the international community cannot be seen being inconsistent and showing, bad faith in the way that, this struggle is being conducted. We recognize that there are issues. There are human rights violations going on. We have condemned those human rights violations. The human rights violations are taking place primarily because Cameroon has occupied our country and has used its military, to engage in a campaign of terror. And the people have risen up in resistance and in defense of their lives and their own territorial space. In war, bad things happen, but those bad things do not alter the claims and objectives of the people. The United States has been engaged in different wars where bad things have happened. But it was not the primary policy of the United States, to orchestrate any form of human rights abuses. Resistance creates ungovernable spaces. Ungovernable spaces, if not speedily filled, are occupied by bad forces. And that's why we have maintained clearly that the defeat of Cameroon requires the international system, to begin to work with the credible leadership of Amazonia to see how we can make those ungovernable spaces governable. Our people will continue to resist Cameroon's occupation, and at the appropriate time, we will be able to restore our statehood. And we know, like the United States has done with other countries, will recognize Amazonia as an independent state and begin to work with Amazonia to build credible relationship that will be mutually beneficial, not only for our two peoples, but also for peoples across different places. Amazonia is the only hope for the Gulf of Guinea. Cameroon is a crumbling political system that has been hijacked since 1960, and it has cost the lives of millions of people, of its own people. And it's just a matter of time before Cameroonians themselves rise up in resistance against this system. And the US must recognize this eventuality and institute policies at this particular time that will alter the trajectory of that area within the continent. The future is bleak with the status quo. The future is bright with that independent Amazonia.